So, they finally understand what happened, don't they? The people who watched you disappear, who saw you step back from everything, who noticed when you stopped showing up, stopped responding, stopped being the person they thought they knew. And now they're starting to realize something that makes them deeply, deeply uncomfortable. You didn't break the way they expected you to. Before we go any further, if this resonates with you, if you've been through your own transformation and came out the other side completely different, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to tell you, most people will never understand. But you already know. You lived it. And I'm here to put words to what you experienced in that silence. Here's what actually happened during those months, those long stretches of time when you went completely off the radar. They thought you were falling apart, didn't they? They imagined you in pieces, crying yourself to sleep, spiraling into depression, becoming exactly the cautionary tale they predicted. Some of them even checked up on you, not out of genuine concern, but because they wanted confirmation. They wanted screenshots, evidence, proof that leaving you behind was the right decision, that you were, in fact, too much to handle. But you weren't posting anything, were you? You weren't documenting your pain with carefully filtered photos and vulnerable captions. You weren't performing your healing for an audience that feeds on other people's breakdowns. No, you were doing something far more threatening. You were rebuilding yourself in complete and total silence. No support group, no therapy posts, no inspirational quotes over sunset backgrounds. You went into the darkness, into that space most people are terrified to enter alone. And instead of getting lost in it, you studied it. You mapped every shadow, learned every lesson, examined every wound, until you understood exactly how you got each one. You didn't just survive your breaking point. You analyzed it like a scientist studying a specimen. They expected you to come back weaker, easier to manage, finally humbled by hardship. Instead, you emerged as something they have absolutely no reference point for anymore. You didn't heal the way the self-help books promised, with forgiveness and closure and letting go. You healed the way a sword is forged, through fire and pressure and repeated hammering until you became something stronger than you were before. You didn't release your pain, you refined it into something useful. And that's what they figured out. That's what keeps them awake at night now. You didn't just survive, you transformed. And you didn't come back looking for their approval, their understanding, or their validation. You came back looking like someone who doesn't need a single thing from anyone anymore. And people who need nothing, those are the only people with real power. Let me tell you what power actually looks like in practice. They sent people to check on you during that period, didn't they? Oh yes. They did. Maybe not directly, but you felt it. Those random messages from people you hadn't heard from in years, that just wanted to see how you're doing. Texts from faces that never cared before. Those weren't genuine. Those were reconnaissance missions disguised as concern. They wanted intelligence. They wanted updates. They needed to know if you were as destroyed as they hoped. Because your destruction would justify everything. Their choices, their betrayals, their decision to walk away when you needed them most. But every single person who came back with information said the same confused thing. I don't know, they seem fine, like strangely fine. They're not talking about what happened. They're not posting about it. They're just different, quieter. There's something I can't quite explain. That's when their anxiety started building. That slow, creeping realization that you weren't broken in any recognizable way. You weren't begging for help. You weren't drowning in self-pity. You weren't performing recovery for social media likes. you were doing something far more unsettling to them. You were becoming unreadable, untraceable, unpredictable. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand anyway. You stopped defending your choices to people who already decided who you were. You stopped showing up to arguments designed specifically to drain your energy. You stopped responding to provocations meant to trigger you. And the silence drove them absolutely crazy. Because silence from someone who used to care so intensely, that's not peace. That's power consolidating itself. Here's what really happened in that dark period that they'll never fully comprehend. You didn't go to therapy and learn to communicate better with people who violated every boundary you ever set. You didn't read books telling you to forgive people who never apologized. You didn't do the acceptable, pretty version of healing that makes everyone comfortable. You did the real work. The ugly, uncomfortable work that has no Instagram aesthetic and no motivational soundtrack. You sat with every betrayal until it stopped hurting and started teaching. You replayed every moment of manipulation until you could see the patterns, the tactics, the psychological games they ran on you while smiling to your face. You examined every relationship that drained you until you understood exactly how you were being used. And here's the key. You didn't forgive these people. You studied them like case studies. You didn't let go of the pain. You let it burn through you until it transformed into something else entirely. Rage became clarity. Hurt became strategy. Confusion became precision. And that's what they cannot handle. You didn't need their closure, their apology, their acknowledgement of what they did. You gave yourself something far more valuable than closure. You gave yourself immunity. Immunity to their manipulation tactics. Immunity to their guilt trips. Immunity to their fake concern and performative care. You became someone who cannot be played anymore because you've memorized every card in the deck. You can't gaslight someone who's cataloged all the lies. You can't manipulate someone who's studied the entire playbook. They figured out that you fixed yourself by breaking every rule of acceptable healing. You didn't become softer, you became sharper. You didn't become more trusting, you became more discerning. You didn't open your heart wider, you built better gates with better locks and better security systems. And the people who expected you to come back begging for their presence in your life, they're the ones watching you now. Not obviously, never obviously, but in the way they mention your name in conversations, in the way they can't quite move on, in the way they keep tabs on you from a distance, hoping to see some crack in your armor that never appears. Want to know the real difference between traditional healing and what you did? Traditional healing would have taught you to understand why they hurt you, to have compassion for their brokenness, to accept that hurt people and therefore everyone deserves forgiveness. But you learned something different. You learned that some people hurt others because they enjoy it, because it makes them feel powerful, because your pain was entertainment to them. And once you truly understood that, once that truth settled into your bones, forgiveness became completely irrelevant. Not because you're bitter, but because forgiveness implies they deserve consideration they never earned. You're not holding a grudge, you're holding a boundary. There's a difference. Let's talk about what actually happened when you stopped trying to heal their way and started doing it your way. Maybe you did try therapy at first. Maybe you sat in that office trying to explain the depth of what you felt. But something shifted in those sessions. You started asking different questions. Not, how do I forgive them? But, why should I? Not, how do I move on? But, why would I forget the lessons they taught me? Not, how do I open up again? But why would I make myself vulnerable to people who proved they can't be trusted? Session by session, you realize something critical. The healing model they were selling you was designed to make you compatible with the same world that broke you in the first place. They wanted to sand down your edges, soften your anger, make you manageable again so you could slot back into their version of normal. But you didn't want normal. Normal destroyed you. Normal made you accept crumbs and call it a feast. Normal taught you to ignore red flags and call it giving people chances. You didn't want to heal back into the person who could be hurt that way. You wanted to become someone who couldn't be touched. So you stopped following the traditional path and started building your own recovery program. And it looked nothing like what they said healing should look like. You didn't journal about gratitude. You journaled about patterns, about warning signs you missed, about specific tactics people used against you. You didn't meditate on forgiveness. You meditated on clarity, on truth, on the cold, hard facts of who people really were when their masks slipped. You didn't practice positive affirmations. You practiced reality affirmations. Instead of, "I am worthy of love," you said, "I am done accepting garbage disguised as affection." Instead of, "I forgive those who hurt me," you said, "I remember every lesson and I will never be that naive again." Instead of, "I am healing," you said, "I am becoming untouchable." And that shift in language, in focus, in intention, that's what they can't fix, because there's nothing broken about it. You're not broken, you're recalibrated. You're not damaged, you're upgraded. Your dark period wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. You broke through the illusion of what healing is supposed to look like. You broke through the fantasy that forgiveness is always the answer. You broke through the lie that letting go means pretending it didn't happen. You held on to every piece of truth you learned in that darkness, and you built a fortress out of it. Not a prison, a fortress. You're not trapped in your past. You're protected by the wisdom it gave you. And now when they look at you, they see someone fundamentally different from who you were before. You don't smile the same way. You don't trust the same way. You don't love the same way. There's a weight to your presence now, a gravity that wasn't there before. People feel it when you enter a room. The air changes. Conversations become more honest or more nervous, but never casual. You affect the atmosphere now. They wanted you to heal so you'd be easy again. Manageable, predictable, safe. Someone they could feel comfortable around. Someone who wouldn't remind them of their own capacity for cruelty. But you healed into someone who makes them deeply uncomfortable. Not because you're hostile, but because you're aware. You see through people now in a way that makes them feel transparent, vulnerable, exposed. Your eyes don't search for the good in people anymore. They search for the truth. And truth makes liars very, very nervous. Here's what they won't tell you about the right way to heal. The right way is the way that makes other people comfortable with having hurt you. It's healing that absolves them of guilt without requiring them to change. It's recovery that makes you safe for them to be around again without them having to earn back the trust they destroyed. But your way makes them sit with what they did. Your absence makes them think. Your silence makes them wonder. Your indifference makes them question whether they ever mattered to you at all. And that is the most powerful form of revenge that doesn't even look like revenge. You didn't have to plot against them. You didn't have to expose them. You didn't have to destroy them. You just had to become someone who doesn't need them anymore. And for people who fed off your need for them, that's worse than any confrontation could ever be. Now here's what truly terrified them about your transformation. It wasn't that you got better. It's how you got better. They could handle you being happy. They could handle you moving on. They could even handle you thriving. What they cannot handle is that you thrived without doing any of the things they told you were necessary. You didn't forgive them and find peace. You found peace without forgiving them. You didn't need closure from them. You closed the door yourself from your side. You didn't get over it the way getting over it is supposed to look. You didn't have some breakthrough moment where you suddenly understood their perspective and released all resentment in a wave of enlightened compassion. No. You had a different kind of breakthrough. You realized that understanding why someone hurt you doesn't obligate you to let them back in. You realized that forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone just because time passed. You realized that healing doesn't require you to make peace with your enemies, just with yourself. And that's when you became dangerous to their narrative. Because they needed you to eventually come around, to soften, to reach out, to give them another chance. They needed your healing to include them somehow, to validate that they weren't really that bad, that it was all just a misunderstanding, that you overreacted back then, but now you're healthy enough to see clearly. But you did see clearly. That was the problem. You saw them exactly as they were and decided that clarity meant distance, permanent distance. Your healing looked like death to them. Not your death, theirs. The death of their access to you, the death of their ability to affect you, the death of their relevance in your story. You stopped being someone they could predict, manipulate, or understand. You stopped fitting into the box they built for you in their minds. You stopped playing the role they assigned you. And when someone refuses to play their part in your story, they become a stranger wearing a familiar face. They watched you go through this transformation and kept waiting for the moment you'd crack, when the mask would slip and they'd see the broken person underneath. But there was no mask. This is just who you became. You're not pretending to be okay. You're not faking being unbothered. You're not performing strength for an audience. You genuinely do not care about them anymore, in any direction. Not love, not hate, not curiosity, not resentment, nothing. And nothing is terrifying because it can't be manipulated. You can work with love, you can work with hate, but you can't work with nothing. Your healing terrified them more than your breakdown ever did. Because your breakdown made sense to them, it fit their worldview. It confirmed that actions have consequences. But your healing broke all the rules. You weren't supposed to get better without them. You weren't supposed to become stronger without their validation. You weren't supposed to thrive while cutting them off completely. And here's the part that really disturbs them. You didn't just heal from what they did to you. You healed from needing people like them in your life at all. You didn't just recover from the specific betrayal. You immunized yourself against that entire category of person. You pattern recognized your way out of ever being vulnerable to their type again. You learned to spot the red flags they showed you in the beginning that you ignored. You learned to trust your instincts when something feels wrong instead of giving benefit of the doubt to people who don't deserve it. They can't come back into your life because there's no door anymore. Not a locked door, not a door with conditions, not a door that might open someday if they apologize correctly. There's no door at all. There's a wall. And on that wall is everything you learned, written in permanent ink. Every lie they told, every manipulation they used, every time they made you question your own reality, every moment they took advantage of your kindness. It's all documented there, and you read it regularly, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, to remind yourself why that wall exists and why it's never coming down. The most powerful thing you did, you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped trying to make them understand why you cut them off. You stopped responding to their "can we talk" messages. You stopped caring whether they thought you were being unfair, harsh, unforgiving, or cold. You released yourself from the exhausting job of making people who hurt you understand why you won't let them do it again. You just moved forward without their permission, without their understanding, without their closure. And that broke their brain, because in their mind, they're entitled to closure. They're entitled to an explanation. They're entitled to the chance to defend themselves, to explain their side. to make you see that it wasn't that bad or that they've changed. But you didn't give them that chance because you realized something crucial. Closure is something you give yourself. It's not a conversation you have with someone who hurt you. It's a decision you make alone. And you decided. They just weren't included in that decision-making process, and they never will be. Let's go deeper into what happened when you stopped healing the way they expected and started building immunity instead. Immunity means they can't infect you anymore. Not with guilt, not with nostalgia, not with memories of good times, not with promises of change. You vaccinated yourself against them, using the very disease they gave you. Every lie became an antibody. Every betrayal became resistance. Every manipulation taught your system to recognize and reject them automatically. You didn't forgive and forget. You remembered and learned. You cataloged every tactic like a field guide to emotional warfare. The love bombing at the beginning, the slow erosion of boundaries, the gaslighting when you questioned inconsistencies, the silent treatment as punishment, the fake apologies that somehow blamed you for their actions. You mapped it all like a military strategy because that's what it was, a war against your peace of mind. And now you can see those patterns in others before they even fully form. You've become unfoolable. That's what they can't stand about your healing. You didn't just recover, you evolved. You didn't just feel better, you got smarter. You didn't just move on. You moved up to a completely different level of awareness, where their games don't work anymore. It's like you were playing checkers and they had you figured out. But then you learned chess, and now they're still trying to use checker strategies on a chess player. It doesn't work. You're operating from a different rule book now, a rule book you wrote yourself based on hard-earned experience. And the final truth they're starting to understand? You're not coming back. Not eventually, not someday, not when enough time has passed. The person they knew doesn't exist anymore. That version of you died in the darkness you went through. What emerged is someone new, someone harder to hurt, someone impossible to manipulate, someone who values peace over popularity and solitude over fake connection. You chose yourself, completely, unapologetically, permanently. And that choice changed everything.